So our first round pick, Brandin Podziemski, not a great summer league, right? There's no doubt about that. And before we go into how I feel like he should approach this first NBA training camp, I want to make a point to Dub Nation. I do, because I feel like there's a portion of the fan base who was and is very pro James Wiseman, right? We totally messed up in trading him, and wait till you see how good Wiseman becomes. But those are the same fans that are willing to announce that Podziemski is a bust after, 6-7 Summer League games? Is it Uchiwali or one mic, right? You can't have it both ways. You can't have it both ways. You can't be pro Wiseman and pro the young players and Kerr's holding them back, but then in the same breath say that this year's draft picks are already busts. Sorry, it doesn't work that way. First impressions are important. There's no two ways around it. What's the first thing someone notices about you? In most cases, it's your face, and more importantly, your skin. So it's time to put your best face forward. How do you do that? By adding a skincare routine. And you know what? It's not hard. You just don't have the right tools. Until now. Clinically proven to reduce wrinkles, fine lines, and signs of aging, Caldera Lab is the leader in men's skincare and is here to save the day. Use our exclusive code ALCHEMY at calderalab.com to enjoy 20% off their best products. Caldera Lab makes high-performance skin products for men, and it starts with the regimen. It's a twice-a-day routine. You start with the clean slate, a cleanser, and then you add your base layer, the moisturizer, and then at night, the secret sauce serum. Now, I'll be 40 here in November, and fortunately, I don't have too many wrinkles, but what I do have is discoloration and really oily skin. And products in the past, usually the cleanser over-dries my skin and the moisturizer makes my skin too oily and greasy again. It's really hard to find a balance. Caldera Lab, I think, has nailed that with the regimen. And so if you want to give it a try, head over to calderalab.com, get 20% off using the code ALCHEMY. Again, head to calderalab.com, use our code ALCHEMY and get 20% off. Jump into your skin and impression royalty with Caldera Lab. So the first thing with Podziemski, I think that you could expect was the athletes are a little bit different than the WCC, right? Coming out of that conference, playing for Santa Clara, it's just smaller, less athletic, less long guys. And you saw instances where, particularly where Pods would get to the elbows of the paint, right? Or he would just start to touch the paint, he would pick the ball up too early. Whether that would be to gather, and he was accustomed to kind of bullying his way down further into the paint, or he'd pick it up to make a pass, and those passing lanes were closing a lot quicker, right? There were a lot of turnovers on skip passes that were like, oh, that window's a lot tighter amongst these athletes, right? And so I think he's going to have to learn how to keep his dribble alive once he touches the paint, a la his Santa Clara alumni and Steve Nash. Remember, Nash would get in the paint, he'd come in, he'd come all the way out. He just never picked up that dribble because he knew once he did that at the NBA level, he was in trouble athletically. And I think we saw the same thing with Podziemski, who, by the way, I was in Summer League and he is a good 6'4". And well built, right? There was rumors that he was like 6'1" or 6'2". No, he's a legit 6'4"-ish, right? I think he's big enough and strong enough. Now the foot speed leaves a little something to be desired, but I thought that it was encouraging. There were a couple plays. I have every Summer League game broken down for him, including the California Classic, on my Patreon if you want to go check out the details. But you saw how quickly his mind works and how he can make up for the foot speed by anticipating and being a step ahead. For instance, there were a couple times where he was on the weak side closeout. He had to close out to 2, right? And he would stunt at the guy getting it and then get back to the passing lane, understanding that second pass was coming. Just little glimpses of that let you know that he's a step ahead. And as he gets more experience at the NBA level, I think that he'll be able to make up for that foot speed by mentally being a step ahead. Now, the other thing as far as the finishing goes, right? It was just a struggle. And I'm surprised, one, that he only has the left hand. He only has the left hand. And Trayce JacksonDavis is the same exact thing. We got 2 lefties here. But with Trayce, it's a little more understandable the way he plays above the rim, right? When you're punching everything like that, you don't usually have to adapt. But as I thought about it, I was like, it makes sense. It makes sense. And I kind of went through my memory book of training players and thinking about it. Lefties tend to be more strong hand dominant, particularly downhill, because they're lefties already, right? They already have that advantage. So they haven't had to adapt as quickly as a right-handed player. By the time you're 15 or 16 as a right-handed ball player, it's like, hey, you're going to have to go left a little bit, right? Everybody's sitting on your right hand. People forget, especially like at the high school level with a lack of scouting reports, they're like, oh, he's a lefty, and you can get away with it all the way up to the collegiate level. And so both these first rounders, I think first and foremost, day to day, they've got to get comfortable I'm using my left hand because that's my offhand, going to their right hand, right? I think that was very limiting as far as Podziemski getting into the paint and finishing. He always had to reach back to the left hand. And then what I was getting ready to say was I was surprised at his lack of ability to draw contact and get into the body. I figured that would be a little more developed considering he's not an above the rim player, right? But I use Austin Reaves as the blueprint, as a guy who, Reaves, he doesn't even jump at the rim. He jumps at the bodies, right? And I think that he can steal that concept as far as getting downhill, find a body, and then have the ability to use either hand to finish. As far as the shooting goes, and listen, we can simplify things right now and say, hey, if he's not going to shoot the ball well, like as he comes advertised, then it's over for him. He's not going to make it in the league. I think we all understand that, but it was an interesting thing there because he came out as this pass. He played like a point guard in Vegas, right? And everything was pass first, and you get to the hill, and he was looking to make passes, get guys involved, and I have various reasons why I assume why he would do that. I think one, he was the only guy, him and Trayce, with guaranteed contracts, right? And probably there's a little element of like, let me share the rock. Like I'm already going to be a part of the team. These guys are super hungry. Let me distribute and do that, which is cool. And we saw the passing ability at Summer League. I think that was probably the biggest positive. But the issue is, when you're always looking to pass, whether that's coming off a screen or turning the corner, getting into the paint, it's very hard to find a rhythm as a shooter, right? And so don't be too discouraged about the shooting performance. I think finishing in the paint, that's something that's like, all right, that might be tough moving forward, right? But I think as far as being a shooter, once he gets back into the mentality of looking for his coming off a screen or catching the ball and immediately going into a rhythm, I think the shot speaks for itself, right? You're not going to forget how to shoot. I think more importantly, it's just the confidence, right? Is he going to have that confidence? We recently heard Draymond we've heard Draymond too much recently. Let's just keep it a buck, right? But when he was talking about how he had lost confidence in his shot, right? And I was talking about it where we've all felt that as a hooper, where I consider myself a shooter. Like I'm a knockdown. I don't hesitate. If there's a window, I'm taking the shot. That's what I do. But I've also been on the court with some D1 cats and some higher level players where like mentally I was like, I probably shouldn't be shooting. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm probably the fifth best option out here. And it can put some hesitation into your shot. And you know, back to Draymond talking about playing with Steph, Clay, and KD. Yeah, he was freezing up on his shot. Like he's too smart to think that it's a good shot in a way, right? But my point is with Podziemski, I'm not worried about the shot itself and that he can't shoot. I'm worried that his confidence and his green light, if you will, amongst a Steph and a Clay and these guys remains strong. You know, confidence for most people, you know, I think we all giggle at irrational confidence guy. We all know that guy, right? And it can be at your workplace. It could be at your pickup game, right? It could be at the bars. You're like, this dude is just a reckless shooter in all assets of life, right? And we can kind of appreciate it and giggle at it, but at the same time, you're like, that ain't me. Like, that ain't me, right? And confidence is a very funny thing. It's like, you know, it's playing a video game. It's your block meter. It's your shield. And you have a certain amount of it, you have a certain amount of confidence, and you can block off struggling at things. You can shield it for so long, but eventually that meter runs down and you have to let it build back up. And with basketball players, my philosophy is you got to do things day to day to keep that shield up, to keep that block meter high. If you're just taking hit after hit, it's finite. It'll disappear. What can you do if it's not working in game for you? What can you do in your day-to-day life and on the court to keep your block meter up, keep your confidence high? And so as far as getting into the paint, keeping your dribble alive, finding bodies, right? And shooters shoot. Shooters shoot. When he's coming off screens, I don't care if it's Steph or Clay, if it's an open shot, he knows the game. You can tell the IQ is there, right? You like the motor, first to the floor, the toughness is there. He knows what a good shot is. It doesn't matter who's there. Just take the good shot, trust the work like he said, and keep that confidence up. I just finished a 25-year retrospect on the Warriors draft. It is on my Patreon. And it is also here on YouTube memberships. It's dope. I'm proud of it. I just released that yesterday, so you can check that out. And one thing that I noticed in going back, we've had some pretty damn good luck with second round picks. Like the history we can talk about. There's a main subject to that video, and I'm not going to spoil it yet. But second round picks, you obviously Draymond, Monte. There's a plethora of them that kind of made up for some busts that we took early on. But let's talk about Trayce JacksonDavis. Did he play twice, right? He was nursing a hamstring. You got to be careful with that. So we only saw him briefly. Right away, that quick second jump. He doesn't load his jump. That's so important. Playing in the paint, being effective as a rebounder. You combine that with the giant mitts, right? Great hands. Right away, he made a couple catches that were kind of behind him or out of his pocket. And I just was like, it brought a tear to my eye watching a big man for the Warriors catch the ball cleanly like that. So the great hands, along with getting off the floor super quickly, he's ahead of the game already. And then he naturally knows how to kind of drift into the dunker spot and roll. That's very encouraging, right? That's a very encouraging sign. You like his energy and overall motor. One thing I did notice is he is a 2-footed jumper by nature. And so on that roll, the summer league, I wasn't a huge fan of the coaching staff and kind of what they did. And I understand every team's philosophy is different. And the Warriors weren't really interested maybe in winning and kind of more of just seeing guys within their system. But at the same time, it was just ugly. It was an ugly summer league for the Warriors this year, but they missed him on quite a few rolls to the basket for lobs. And again, when you're a 2-footed guy, when you're coming vertically, like straight down the rim on a pick and roll, it's a lot easier to go up off 1 foot and get it. It gives you just a bigger window. 2 feet, the timing has to be perfect. And so I'm curious to see, because I'm not ready to say he can or can't. I think he's got a ton of bounce. Can he jump off 1 foot just as well as 2? Because I think that would open up more possibilities on the roll as a vertical spacer. And then again, back to using his off right hand, just like Podziemski. If he can equally jump off 1 and 2 feet and use both hands at the basket, he is going to be one of the more dynamic finishers the Warriors have had in a while, right? And it's going to work. And he knows the right place, right time. Defensively, and I saw this a lot at Indiana, the one thing is he's a block hunter. He's a block hunter, and there's a correlation, right? Guys that chase blocks and try to block everything, they're not great defensive rebounders, obviously, right? Because they pull themselves out of position. I'm sure Loon can help counter that, right? But Jaren Jackson Jr. is the best example I'll give you, right? Like, what is he, 3 or 4 blocks a night? And then you look and you're like, how did bro have 6 rebounds? He's this athletic 7-footer. Well, he's chasing everything. He doesn't positionally rebound. And I see that same trait in Trayce Jackson where he tries to go get things and he'll even bait somebody into putting up the shot so he can try to go get it instead of just taking the shot away completely by being in the right position. So these are things that, are going to be coached up. But overall, I think an encouraging 2 games for Trayce Jackson. Podziemski, I caution y'all to write him off. It'd be silly anyway, but listen, I've been watching Summer League for, as long as it's existed. I remember paying for the stream. It used to be $14.99 on NBA.com, and it was a shoddy stream. I've watched a lot of Summer Leagues. I've watched a lot of players explode in Summer League, and the best way I can describe it to you is we always hear this hooper versus basketball player conversation. Oh, he's a hooper. Oh, he's a basketball player, right? Hoopers look really good in that environment. Basketball players, depending on who they're playing with, the system, the opportunity, they can look not so good. I have a suspicion Podziemski is going to look a lot better amongst better players because he's a basketball player. Now, Cam Whitmore, won Summer League MVP, hooper, bucket getter, right? Very impressive. I don't want to take anything away from him. And frankly, I'm rooting for him because when you see a kid slide like that, Villanova coach it was funky business as to why he slid. However, I'm not looking at him as the guy the Warriors whiffed on. They were never going to take Whitmore. If we had the 10th pick and he wasn't flagged, listen, does he look like a guy Kerr's going to play? Right? You have, and this is by not my accounts, this is the scouting report. He's a lower IQ player, isolation scorer with flagged knees. The Warriors, at the point we're at right now, the all-in on the core threes final window, you couldn't take that risk. Y'all that were meeting with the live stream as he slid, as he was still available and it's working towards the 19th pick, I got nervous. I was like, hell, I don't want to take him either. Like, what's going on? Like, you know what I'm saying? It was like everybody running out of a mall or something. I was like, nah, I'm going to run too. So I'm not going to blame them for not taking Whitmore. I think the players and again, you can't make these conclusions for, we got to wait a couple years. But I know we're anxious and we want to do these things. But like Chris Murray, the big wing Dallas took, there were a handful of guys that went after Podziemski that I think would have made sense and they could have taken. Those are the guys long-term that will compare the pick to. But Whitmore, it was too risky for where the Warriors are at right now and what they're trying to accomplish. But yeah, that's what I saw with Summer League and how I'm feeling. I'm not nearly as down on Podziemski as the consensus is because I understand what that environment is. And I saw enough things to make me feel good about, what he can become as an NBA player. But the question was, are either of these guys going to play? And the running joke that Kerr's never going to play young guys. I feel like these were Kerr picks, honestly. Obviously, Bob Myers transitioning out. Dunleavy's already been here. But it feels like these are Kerr type of guys. And so I like internal competition, right? Corey Joe, Moses Moody are going to have something to say about Podziemski getting on the floor. How about Lester Quinones signing that two-way deal? And then Trayce, I think Trayce just brings a different element to, you could say Kuminga, but Kuminga's not really a big, right? Kuminga's like a big wing. Trayce Jackson's a big, even though he's a little undersized. So his pop and vertical spacing, I think, is just an element that is going to buy him some spot minutes on the floor pretty quickly. But let me talk about Lester real quick here. He got the two-way deal and was probably the best Warrior in Summer League. I won't say probably, he was. Led Summer League in minutes. They featured him, gave him a ton of opportunity. And he showed that to be I liked his defensive motor. I thought he was fit. He was maybe a little over physical, trying to show that he was willing to do that, trying to take a lot of charge and get into the body, but the effort level was there. And then he shot the seams off the ball for most of Summer League. It tapered off at the end because he was playing so many minutes. But what I was impressed was there were several games from Quinones where he started off like 1 of 7, 2 of 10. And he shot through it. So you talk about that confidence meter, that block bar, his seems to be pretty large, at least in the Summer League setting, right? Which is a very G League-like setting. On the big squad, is he going to still have that type of confidence and shoot the shots he needs to take? But I think a well-deserved two-way spot for Lester. We'll see if Guy Santos gets that one. Did he break the collarbone there late in that final game or that second to last game? I don't know. I haven't heard. Let me know who else you'd want on the two-way, the final roster spot. We've kind of talked about that. But more importantly, I kind of want to know how y'all are feeling about the rookies and perhaps what you see and how they could get better or how they could get on the floor this season. Hit that like, share, and subscribe. I'm out, y'all.